hundreds of thousands, I guess, of Communist Party officials, all sorts of people, teachers who go out and teach Communist Party ideology. They're sort of Communist Party, hacks. I mean, that's perhaps a bit unfair, but I mean, there's a huge industry in China teaching Communist Party ideology and the people who are going to teach that and pass it on. That's called scientific socialism. But there's another branch of what's called what they call Western Marxism, which is completely different. I mean, where they study, British Marxism, American Marxists, French, German. It's very, very broad and scholarly and very high quality, actually, very good. And that is, as long as it doesn't become too politicized in the Chinese context, that's allowed to just go its own way. And it doesn't interact with the Chinese, what they call, socialism with Chinese characteristics, which is a wonderful phrase, which has very little, almost nothing to do with Marx or Marxism, these are just two separate worlds.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting to hear. Just to cycle back, you did also visit the USSR, and there you, I remember you told me once how this was, I think, in either the late 70s or maybe the early 80s.
Mid 80s.
Mid 80s, and how depressing the visit it was.
Oh God, it was so different to China. I mean, China was vibrant, alive. I mean, even within, definite, it's an authoritarian country within limits, but the Soviet Union, which is it was the beginning of the Gorbachev era. I didn't even want to go to the Soviet Union actually before things began to liberalize, but I thought I'll go and have a look. And it was it was a police state. I mean, that was the difference. China is not a police state. I mean, there are very definite police controls, but it's really had a completely different atmosphere. One felt surveyed, one felt, everybody who I talked to obviously felt scared and very constrained in what they could say, which I feel I've never had in China. Totally different atmosphere.
And was that kind of an academic trip?
It was just a tourist. I mean, a group. It's the only time I've ever been on a tourist group tour, I think. But I did arrange when I was there. It took me a lot of doing, but I arranged to meet philosophers insofar as I could. I had a very amusing meeting with. I'd arranged to meet a group of philosophers in as it was then Leningrad, and I was told to go to this sort of palace. Where I think it was the Institute of Philosophy or something had its headquarters. So I arrive in this building and go up. I mean, sort of ushered in upstairs, and there's a big room, and these poor philosophers were all sitting in the dark. They didn't even switch the lights on until I arrived. But then they switched the lights on, and these people. I mean, it was impossible to talk to them. They were like tape record. They were just mouthing official doctrine, which they clearly didn't really believe in. I mean, it was just, they were just complete sort of hacks and robots. And then when I finished, and then we left the building, and then they all sort of ran out after me and tried to get free books off me and anything I could. It was a terribly depressing experience. But there's been a flourishing of Russian philosophy actually since, and of Marxism. The sort of some earlier Marxist philosophers who were very persecuted under the Soviet regime. People like Ilyenkov, who's a really interesting and important Hegelian Marxist philosopher who was driven to suicide under the Soviet regime, has been revived. And there's so. It's very small, I think, current Marxist philosophy in Russia, but it's a lot more interesting than it was under the Soviet regime.
Well, hello, listener. I hope you like what you're hearing. It's a short excerpt from an episode that's available only to subscribers. Want to support BungaCast and get at least 2 original episodes a month? Sign up at patreon.com/BungaCast right now. $5 a month patrons get access to exclusive episodes like our in-depth analyses of present history. You know, the big stuff that's happening right now. As well as chats with our regular guests, extended interviews with the key thinkers trying to understand our world today, and much more. For $10 a month, you join the BungaCast Reading Club, the place for those of us who are serious about equipping ourselves with the necessary intellectual tools for understanding the world and seeking to change it. Phil, George, and myself, Alex, look forward to seeing you there. Patreon.com/BungaCast.